I, Dr. Rita Pratap, former head of the Department Drawing and Painting, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. Module 1, Japan, the prehistoric period of Japan, 11 millennium BC to 6th century AD. Japanese archaeology is the oldest and most systematic in East Asia. As its official sanitary, in 1977, 100,000 sites have been documented. Artifacts ranging from Paleolithic toolkits to Mesolithic and Neolithic ceramics have been excavated. Venus of Lake Nogeri is an 1975 excavation figurine shaped made of a core of a Norman elephant tusk. During Jomon period, that is from 11,000 to 300 BC, utilitarian vessels used for food were made. Around 7500 BC, archaic or earliest Jomon ware first appeared, which were highly textured, incised or cord impressed, having the qualities of low relief sculpture. In the Middle Jomon, elaborate urns or jars were made for ritual offerings. An example is Ua Mataka, made from the fired clay urn in basketwork form. In late Jomon period, that is from 2500 to 1000 BC, double right shaped vessels, pouring vessels and open and closed spouts and short squat lidded pots with cylindrical spouts were made. Figure of a boar, squatting figure, ceramic vase, etc. were made. In the period of the end of terminal Jomon, that is from 1000 to 300 BC, extremely sophisticated vessels and figure appear. Kamegameoka, Omari Prefecture, is a clay figurine of a female showing crown-shaped hair and goggle eye type. A single land mass surrounded an immense lake, the present Sea of Japan, offering a vast area for the earliest people moving east. The land bridges were opened through both a northern and southern avenue. But in view of the glaciations in North Asia and the intensity of the cold, the northern route was inhospitable and never extensively used. A good archaeological record of the people who made their way into Japan during the last 30,000 years have been progressively revealed in the excavations carried out since 1948, when the first Paleolithic site was identified. These people hunted the large herbivorous as they migrated east, probably as people in China occupied more of their feeding areas. Chief among these animals were the Norman elephants. Japanese archaeology is the oldest and most systematic in East Asia. As its official sanitary, in 1977, 100,000 sites have been documented, yielding a fascinating array of artifacts ranging from Paleolithic tool kits to Mesolithic and Neolithic ceramics. The first artistic products were made in the Upper Paleolithic and were responses to religious ideas. The arts contributed towards this psychology of survival, with stylized figures in ivory and stone being carved extending the practice of Europe and North Asia to Japan. Archaeologists divide the Japanese Paleolithic age into two periods: early 50,000 to 30,000 BC and late 30,000 to 11,000 BC. The division comes with the technological evolution from crude and simple scrapers and cutting tools to more sophisticated blades, knives, and small tools for engraving, drilling, scraping, and piercing. Elephants were trapped at Lake Nojori in Nagamo Prefecture in swampy beds along the water edge, and several thousands bones have been removed at low water from normally submerged shores. The 1975 excavation unearthed a finely shaped figurine made from the core of a Norman elephant tusk. It came from the deposits between 31,000 and 25,000 years old. Popularly called the Venus of Lake Nojari, thought to be a small female idol, whose middle is strongly constricted and each end is smoothly tapered. The upper front is unfortunately sheared off where face working had weakened the structure of the material. The lower back has few thin scratches of uncertain meaning. Its finely shaped symmetry indicates a maker of a considerable skill backed by a solid tradition. It is unlikely to be the only one of its kind. Another fertility object closer to the end of Paleolithic period is a stone club known as Sikibo, spoken of as in the shape of Kokeshi doll, found in the Iwato site in Oita Prefecture in the southern part of the country. Along with parts of two others, it was located in the layer datable at around 12,000 BC. Made from chlorite schist, a stone with scaly surface and badly weathered through contact with the soil. The head was packed out in rudimentary, faintly visible features of eyes and mouth. The lower part is straight, undecorated shaft. These are thus the oldest known examples of a long history of stone phallic symbols, which became country site protectors in much later times. In the prehistory of art, great length of the Jomon period was reduced to manageable divisions. The system was drawn from pottery typology and its framework was devised in the late 1930s. On the basis of carbon 14 dates and other dating methods, the approximate time span of these subdivisions is as follows, omitting the problems of regional and overlapping. Earliest 9000 to 5000 BC, early from 5000 to 3500, middle 3500 to 2400 BC, late 2400 to 1000 BC, and the latest 1000 to 350 BC. An abrupt worldwide cooling took place between about 12,000 and 10,000 years ago. Following the long warming trend, the big game had been unable to survive the rising temperature, the increasing pressures of improved hunting techniques, and decreased land space. The southern and the Korean routes were first to go, followed by the northern route. The search for alternate food sources led to marine fishing and shellfish gathering. Baskets were woven, dogs domesticated, and dugout canoes were made in Japan. Pottery was invented in the south. The practice of cooking in pots made edible some plants which were otherwise useless and made others more palatable and sometimes more nutritious. A sequence of carbon 14 dates the stratigraphy in the sites where the earliest pottery is found, and the typographical development of the pottery as it was diffused to other parts of the country are all evidence for its remarkable antiquity. Starting around 10,000 BC in the Nagasaki prefecture, the earliest types were carried toward the north, while the hunters, who were reduced to smaller and faster animals, took their finely balanced bifocal points used for spears and darts and adapted them to arrows and bows for quick long range shots. The Jomon culture. The Jomon culture lasted from 11,000 BC to 300 BC. Japanese archaeologists date the following or the Mesolithic period characterized by a hunting, fishing and gathering way of life from 11,000 to 3000 BC. Modern studies of the Jomon period, indeed for all of Japanese prehistory, started in 1877 when Professor Edward S. Morse excavated a shell mounds of Omari between Yokohama and Tokyo. His site reported comments on the abundance of pottery in an infinite variety of form and ornamentation, and he describes it as being cord marked or cord impressed. Sometimes later, the term was translated literally as Jomon, after the distinctive surface decoration of its pottery. Throughout the 10,000 years of the Jomon period, almost all pots were decorated usually by impressing the soft clay to make a texture surface. The pots were embellished with a tweed-like surface achieved by rolling a rope or a cord onto the clay. Other decoration effects were made by applying a flat braid twisted into a spiral or a cord wrapped around a stick, by rolling a short squarish piece of wood in the clay to give the effect of a straw mat, or by impressing with shells, fingernails, or the ends of split bamboo. Considerable variation is seen in shapes and designs depending on geographical location, and it is to be taken into consideration that although there was human presence all over the country, regional hostilities and primitive communication routes casual areas to be isolated long enough for regional pottery types to evolve. Innovations appeared slowly during those long eras, as sheer survival must have had priority over anything else. However, by the Middle Jomon, a further warning of climate led to a subculture emerging in the mountain of the Central Asia of the island of Honshu around present-day Tokyo that has become known for its splendid, large and richly decorated pots. So also some degree of settlement provided suitable conditions for the germination of this creativity
and remains of villages of pit dwellings have been found widely throughout the area. Not only are some of these pots too large to be easily portable, but in many cases the decoration is so elaborate and top heavy that they would have been impractical for everyday use. There is evidence that some sort of spiritual belief has appeared at this time, and it can be presumed that many of these ornate vessels were made for ritual purposes or perhaps even purely to demonstrate artistic virtuosity.
The early vessels were quickly and easily made by kneading and punching in the hand and utilized the natural qualities of clay. They had smooth sides and generous interiors, enabling easy storage as befits utilitarian vessels used for food. They were sparingly decorated. Some scholars term this ware incipient or proto-Jomon, suggesting a continuity and internal development between it and Jomon wares. But the new ware, archaic or the earliest Jomon, suggests markedly different attitudes to ceramic form. And also to everyday eating and living. It seems doubtful that both styles could have come into a single developing culture. It would be more appropriate, therefore, to call the earliest phase pre-Jomon. The archaic or earliest Jomon first appeared around 7500 BC. Examples have been found along the whole main archipelago from Hokkaido to Okinawa and on outlying islands such as Tsushima, Sado, Oki and Izulis. It is highly textured, incised or cord impressed and has the qualities of low relief sculpture. It is usually built up from the piled or coiled clay rings, hand joined inside and outside, and the outer surface is entirely covered with texture decoration, painstakingly applied. The typical pot is conical in form with a sharply pointed bottom, a flaring, often quatrefoil rim, and constricted and inaccessible interior. This form is far more difficult and time consuming. To make them are pots with open interiors such as the pre-Jomon ware. Even more time consuming is the application of the cord marks by rolling a cord covered stick smartly along the still damp, fragile surface of the clay cone. The middle Jomon. Middle Jomon people thrived on the abundant nut harvests and lived in larger villages. The population reached its maximum at this time. The quantity of pottery, size of pots, new shapes, and variety in decoration, including zomophoric motifs, are all reflection of a more relaxed life, added leisure time, and appreciation of art. Thus, the period sees even more extraordinary developments. The base is flattened, the rim rises majestically to a height equaling the vessel body, and the lip is often topped with rippling scallops. The entire surface is alive with curvy liner, high raised decoration with writing coils forming spirals, S-shape, and meanders. Vessels of this period are mostly elaborate urns or jars and were probably used for making ritual designs. An example is of a umataka fired clay urn in basket form. It is of a middle Jomon period. Tusunan Machi, Board of Education, Niigata Prefecture.
The decoration of these Middle Jomon pots extended beyond the characteristics impressed marks seen on the earlier pieces and includes elaborate sculptural flourish that reveal an advanced artistic sense and imagination. A wide variety of pot shapes appear that could have been used as lamps, charcoal holders, or drinking cups, as well as the everyday utilitarian vessels used in cooking. The sculptural decoration was achieved by modeling the clay into forms that were then used to construct the pot. Many of these are abstract or possibly symbolic, but some are recognizable as animals, reptiles, birds, insects, or human faces, all imaginative but bizarrely unrealistic. There is no doubt that the Middle Jomon potter loved to play with clay. An example is of a terracotta figurine mid-Jomon period and at present in the National Museum, Tokyo. The figure with its flat half-moon shaped face lacking a chin but with a hair lip. This remarkable figure is quite unique. One might well ask what creature inspired the artist to create this figure. In all likelihood, it is the product of a lively imagination.
Middle German figurines are obtuse with emphasized distended buttocks and squirrel-like heads. All of these features were exclusive to mountain life and were abandoned as the people evacuated the region. If the Middle German style was made in the mountains, as is often said, and reflects rugged life sturdy house with thick roof walls, subhuman figurines, persuasive fertility cults, extravagantly decorated pots, including zoomorphic symbols. The late Jomon style was shaped along the coast. It represents a more systematized life. Lightweight houses, anthropomorphic figurines, vessels decorated modestly in simple shapes with repeated motifs. The number of female figurines is often so great, one assumes that each household must have had its own. They are gingerbread types, more human than the animal faces of Middle Jomon. Triangular heads may be masks, stump arms and legs. Enlarged breasts and protruding abdomens are characteristics of the coastal. Examples: heart-shaped, tilted faces, and more three-dimensional and sometimes narrow bodies are inlaid features. As regarding the late Jomon, in the late Jomon period, it dates from 2500 BC to 1000 BC. Another dramatic change reflects the arrival of a ceramic rooted culture, which emphasized the natural properties and forms of clay. There is a hint of Central Asian styles with double Rhyton shaped vessels, pouring vessels with open and closed spouts, and short, squat, lidded pots with cylindrical spouts attached. Bowls and round bottomed vessels reappear, as well as amphor and narrowed necks and serving bowls with handles. These indicate a major shift in culinary habits, which includes the discovery of fermentation. The new typological development now retains the raised surface design characteristic of Jomon ware.
Late Jomon pots tend to be less exuberantly baroque than these of the earlier period and show a variety of new forms such as sprouted teapots, bowls on pedestals, probably used in ritual, and some very elegant vessels with rims. Clay reproductions of objects from nature, such as the shells, are also found that date from this period. Another example is of a late Jomon period is of a clay vessel in the form of a shell. At present, it is in the National Museum, Tokyo. During the late Jomon period, clay objects were made with great artistic skill and so were not just regarded as a utilitarian items. The vessel pictured here is in the carefully observed form of a whelk, a shellfish that is abundantly in Japanese water. The clay tends to be finer than that used earlier, and the late Jomon pots are often modeled with thinner walls and have the surface smoothened and polished on the outside. Some examples are found that have been lacquered, perhaps to make them waterproof. As all Jomon pots were fired at low temperature and are therefore porous or painted with mineral pigments such as iron oxide. Most of the late Jomon pots show a surface decoration made by impressed cord marks or carving, though now with added refinement of the textured surface being restricted to defined areas as part of the overall design. This was achieved by first drawing a pattern on the pot, impressing with cords or other material to make a textured surface, then rubbing and smoothing out this texture except for that within the lines of the original pattern. Thus, late Jomon style was shaped along the coast. It represents more systematized life, lightweight houses, anthropomorphic figurines, vessels decorated modestly in simple shapes with repeated motifs. The deteriorating climate brought about a great deal of movement. The population scattered widely in search of adequate sources of food, going on all directions but specially towards the south. In the late Jomon, the number of female figurines is often so great that one assumes that each household must have had its own. An example is of a clay figure, late Jomon period and at present in the National Museum, Kyoto. This clay figurine from the late Jomon period is remarkable for its rich decoration and its bizarre form, in particular its eyes. The proportion and shape of the body are extremely stylized. The swirling pattern of the body and the elaborate headdress indicate a highly exotic costume. They are gingerbread types more human than the animal faces of Middle Jomon. Triangular heads may be masks, stemp arms and legs, enlarged breasts and protruding abdomens are characteristics of the coastal examples. Heart-shaped, tilted faces and more three-dimensional and sometimes narrow bodies are inland features. Thin-walled pots, vases and bowls in brown colors made of refined clay assumed unpretentious forms. The decorations called erased cord making Suri Keshi Jomon, that is the rubbing off the spill over after the cord mark was done in marked off areas and the surface was smoothened for neatness, spread to all parts of the country, from Hokkaido to Kyushu.
An example is a figure of a boar. This is at present in the Municipal Teaching Museum, Hirosaki, Omori Prefecture. The squatting figure is also made of terracotta and date from latest Jomon. It is at present in the Municipal Teaching Museum, Fukushima. A ceramic vase is found highly stylized, geometric, and contains naturalistic decoration. It is at present in the collection of National Museum, Tokyo. From 1000 to 300 BC, that is in the terminal Jomon, stemmed ware began to appear. Shallow serving bowls and amphorae with long necks, these suggest acquaintance with the wheel-thrown ware. Aside from its spectacular pottery, Jomon culture produced decorated blades of ivory, horn and bone, bracelets and earrings. For his spiritual needs, Jomon man carved figurines from stone and molded them in clay. At about the same time, Middle Jomon pottery urns were developing elaborate features. These figurines also underwent a dramatic transformation. Previous figurines had minimal facial features, such as a pinched nose and punctures for eyes. Mid-Jomon figurines have raised line, eyebrows, and rather startling eyes, large perforations, round or almond-shaped. But by late Jomon, that is 2500 to 1000 BC, they assume a mask-like quality, and in some areas they become highly ornate with shamanistic features surmounted by all kinds of decorative paraphernalia. At the end of the period, in terminal Jomon, that is from 1000 to 300 BC, extremely sophisticated vessels and figure appear. The hollow body, whether of pot or figurine, is covered with elaborate raised cord impressed patterns, and the figurines have enormous insect or shell-shaped eyes. The kind of cord impressed pattern over a plain cord erased background is a particularly sophisticated use of negative space, that is undecorated. Although the ritual use is still unknown, these late figurines have such enormous horizontal silted eyes that some scholars say that they are the products of an age of deep superstition and fear. It is, however, difficult to reconcile superstition and fear with the uninhibited decoration, also characteristics of these artifacts, which seem far more readily attributed to Jomon man, is exuberance and general delight in the dance of life. Northern sites have yielded numerous female figures. Many are hollow, like the vessels. They may be polished and painted. Raised patterns are frequently cord marked. An example of clay figurine of a female showing crown-shaped hair and goggle-eye type with bloated bodies, arms and legs, low-relief decorations. This is from the final phase of Jomon period, that is terminal Jomon, and belongs to Kame Gamoeka Omari prefecture. This kind of cord impressed pattern over plain cord erased background is a particularly sophisticated use of negative, that is undecorated, space. The motive behind making them hollow may have been to provide space for the resident spirit giving soul to the object. The most significant religious legacy of the Jomon period is the stone circles and menhirs found in the Tohaku area in Akita and further north in Hokkaido, some measuring as much as 30 meters across. Each centers on a square burial pit in which bones were placed, covered with pebbles. These tombs resemble those found in Siberia from Bronze Age into the early Iron Age. A peculiar feature of each site, however, is the placing of a large upright stone in the center from which other long stones laid flat radiate like the spokes of a wheel. This sundial-like arrangement suggests an agrarian society, aware of seasonal changes, but the link in any with the following Yayoi culture, if not yet clear. An example of Nona Kedo stone group in sundial arrangement at the center of a burial pit belongs to late Jomon is also found.